What if I told you that most of the world's biggest crises, extreme poverty, hunger, unsafe water, lack of education, even basic healthcare, could be dramatically reduced with just a small fraction of global wealth? Not half, not even 10%, just 4%, and this isn't a fantasy. It's based on real numbers, real estimates, and real global data. So today, let us ask a serious question. Why do these problems still exist, and what would it actually take to solve them? Stay with me, because the numbers you're about to hear may completely change how you see wealth and inequality. According to multiple economic studies, the top 1% of the world owns somewhere between $250 and $300 trillion. That's roughly half of all wealth on Earth. To visualize this, imagine a tiny group of people controlling more money than the remaining 99% of the global population combined. Now, this video isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding scale. It's about grasping the sheer magnitude of the resources available. Because when we talk about ending world problems, people often say, it's impossible. The world is just too big. The issue's too complex. But the numbers tell a very, very different story. Let's start with extreme poverty. As of today, hundreds of millions of people still live on less than $2.15 per day. That's barely enough for a single meal in many parts of the world. According to global development organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank, ending extreme poverty worldwide would cost roughly $175 billion per year for about 10 years. That comes out to a total of $1.75 trillion. That sounds like a lot of money, right? But let's put that into perspective. That $1.75 trillion is less than 1% of the wealth held by the top 1%. It's a fraction of what global markets gain or lose in a single volatile year. It's an amount that, in the grand scheme of global finance, is almost a rounding error. Yet for millions of families, this would mean having food on the table, a roof over their heads, safety, and basic human dignity. It's the difference between life and death. Next up, world hunger. This is often linked to poverty, but it's a distinct problem with its own set of solutions. Ending chronic hunger and achieving global food security is estimated to cost around $40 to $50 billion per year. That's it. This amount would fund things like better food distribution systems, support for small-scale farmers with more resilient crops, and emergency response systems for famines and natural disasters. Meanwhile, global spending on luxury goods, things like designer clothes, expensive cars, and yachts exceeds hundreds of billions every single year. The contrast here isn't meant to be emotional. It's purely mathematical. The resources to feed every person on this planet already exist, multiple times over. Now, let's consider something even more fundamental than food: clean water. It's something many of us take for granted, but millions of people still die each year from diseases caused by contaminated water and poor sanitation. We're talking about cholera, typhoid, and dysentery illnesses that are almost entirely preventable. Experts estimate that providing universal access to clean water and sanitation would cost around $150 to $200 billion total, not per year, a one-time comprehensive investment. That's less than the net worth of a single ultra-wealthy individual. Think about that for a moment. One person's fortune could solve one of humanity's oldest and most deadly problems. And yet, for so many communities around the globe, finding clean water remains a daily, life-threatening struggle. What about education? Giving every child on Earth access to a basic education is one of the most powerful tools for long-term progress. It's estimated to cost about $39 billion per year. Education isn't just about learning to read and write in a classroom. It's a powerful engine for change. It reduces poverty by opening doors to better jobs. It improves public health because educated people make more informed decisions. It creates long-term economic stability for entire nations. In fact, economists widely agree that every single dollar spent on education generates multiple dollars in future economic growth. It's one of the highest return investments a society can make. Then there's basic healthcare. We're not talking about luxury private hospitals or cutting-edge experimental treatments. We're talking about essential care, childhood vaccinations, maternal health services to ensure safe births, and treatment for preventable diseases like malaria and tuberculosis. The estimated cost to provide this for everyone, around $200 to $300 billion per year. This level of investment could save millions of lives annually and prevent diseases that end up costing healthcare systems far more in the long run. It's preventative, it's effective, and it's a moral imperative. Even problems in developed countries, like homelessness, are a matter of resource allocation. In the United States alone, various studies suggest that an investment of around $100 billion per year could drastically reduce homelessness by funding permanent supportive housing and related social services. This approach has been proven to be more effective and, in many cases, cheaper than managing the crisis through emergency rooms, shelters, and police services. And finally, the big one: climate change. Preventing the worst outcomes of a warming planet is a monumental task. Estimates suggest it would require somewhere between $3 and $6 trillion total over the next decade. This would fund the global transition to renewable energy, help communities adapt to new climate realities, and build resilient infrastructure. That number sounds massive. almost impossibly large until you compare it to the $250 to $300 trillion in global wealth we talked about earlier. It's a huge sum, but it's still just a small piece of the overall pie. So now, let's step back and look at the big picture. If you add up the high-end estimates for all of these problems, ending extreme poverty, solving world hunger, providing clean water, educating every child, ensuring basic healthcare, tackling homelessness, and funding climate action, we're still talking about a figure that represents roughly 4% of the wealth held by the world's richest individuals. 4%. So the real question isn't, is it possible? The data clearly shows that it is. The resources are there. The real question is, how do we, as a global society, choose to allocate our resources? Now, this doesn't mean the solutions are simple. Money alone won't solve everything. There are enormous challenges to overcome: corrupt governments, logistical nightmares in getting aid to remote areas, and the massive political cooperation required to make any of this happen. But the argument that humanity simply can't afford to solve these fundamental problems is just not supported by the facts. The resources exist, the technology exists, the knowledge exists. What's really being debated are our priorities. If this video made you think, consider subscribing to Monetra US for more fact-based breakdowns of global finance, inequality, and economic systems. And now I want to ask you, if the resources exist, what do you think is the biggest obstacle holding the world back from solving these problems? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.